Eddie Capparucci has helped thousands of men break free from addiction, not by just changing their behavior, but by transforming their minds.
How do I stop this action? How do I stop looking at pornography? How do I stop my other problematic sexual behavior?
His groundbreaking work on inner child healing has revealed something most recovery programs miss completely.
And you continue to do it over and over again, and you continue to play around with the neural pathways in the brain, guess what we have? An addiction.
If you're serious about real, lasting freedom, don't go anywhere. This is the conversation you need to hear. Welcome to the Man Within podcast. Subscribe now for more life-changing content. Now, let's dive in.
Well, it's great to have Eddie Capparucci back on the podcast. Welcome, man. Thanks for coming back.
Oh, it's always my pleasure to be here with you guys. I always enjoy our time together. We have so many things to talk about.
Yeah.
Let's just get right into it.
It's kind of cool how, and sorry, I should say, Shawn, you're here with us as well. And
Yeah.
so, Shawn, welcome. Sorry, you were trying to say hi, and I'm too excited to interview Eddie. But welcome, man. Good to have you too.
I come around once in a while. I'm here. It feels good to be here.
Good to have you with us.
Yeah, absolutely. So Shawn and I were just talking about, this was like probably end of 2024. Just, the inner child work has been so impactful for us, Eddie. And it's cool to see how these stories all weave together, because when you were first on the podcast talking about inner child work, I think it was about 3 years ago, this was a more clinical aspect of something that I had learned in more of a ministry school environment. And I really liked it. Your book just took off. It caught total fire in our entire area. I think people seen the need for this kind of inner child work in a recovery context, specifically with porn addiction. And then since then, you started a certification program that Shawn went and did on his own. And then Shawn joined the Deep Clean team and has now really brought a lot of that over to us in a much more impactful way. And so, our community of clients who are in recovery or who are recovered, they understand inner child work very, very well. But I wanted to do a deep dive on it with our audience today. And Shawn is our resident expert in the Deep Clean community. And you were kind of like the godfather of inner child work as far as we're concerned in porn addiction recovery. So we wanted to just get the heavy hitters on here today and do a deep dive. Does that sound like a plan?
It sounds like a great plan. Yeah, and Shawn definitely understands this whole concept. Like you said, been through the training. He and I have had many in-depth conversations about it. And I'm just glad that you guys have been able to see the benefit, that your clients are seeing the benefit of this therapeutic approach.
It's been amazing. Yeah. I'd love to hear from you, Eddie. Why do you think inner child work is so impactful compared to other modalities? Because obviously you're well-versed in a ton.
Yeah, it is not so much the fact that, the other treatments that are out there are not practical and not helpful. In fact, as I always tell people, the inner child work is to be used with other treatments. Okay, we don't use it just on its own exclusively. The reason I think it is so impactful is because just what the title of the book is, it goes deeper. All right. It's like we're not just trying to figure out, okay, how do I stop this action? How do I stop looking at pornography? How do I stop my other problematic sexual behavior? How do I stop withdrawing from people? Okay. How do I stop being aggressive? Instead, it is, why do I do that? Because then by understanding why I think, feel, and do what I do, we are greatly empowered. We have this knowledge that can really help to shape us to make true changes in our life, but not just to make those changes, but to keep those changes life-lasting. And that's why I think it's so powerful when you watch men walk through the program, and now we're watching women walk through the program too, because we now have the inner child for women who struggle also. And their eyes are open. And Shawn, you've seen a lot of this, and it's just like, oh my gosh. And then what you hear is universal. If I had only known, what were the real drivers that took me down this pathway. Yeah. It wasn't sex. It wasn't that I'm a pervert. That wasn't it. The real drivers. And then you have to work with them to try to get them through that shame and regret and say, hey, you know what? We're all oblivious to it. But now you know. And now you can really obtain great freedom moving forward.
Couldn't agree more. So good, Eddie. And maybe just to piggyback off that question, I'm so curious because it's been a journey for me to take what I learned in the certification, to take things I've learned from even Drew Boa and husband material, and learn how to even grow in the realm of leading the inner child and taking awareness and moving into leadership. So one of the things that I have done continually over the time is ask, like, how does it work really well with other modalities? And how does this maybe lay a foundation for other modalities to even work better? So I was curious for you, Eddie. I don't actually know all the details of that, but what were you doing before inner child work, and how did inner child work even radically transform the way you counsel people?
Oh, well, I mean, I've always been a fan of inner child work, the basic inner child work that was out there, because I've always been that kind of why guy. I really want to understand. I also have always felt, when I got into this about 15 years ago, I've always had this feeling, again, based on my own, what I went through, that this is so much more complex than it's just somebody who's going off to try to get this stimulation and thrill. What it is wounds. And most of these wounds are related back to our childhood. And many of them, one, they're suppressed. We don't even know they really exist. And two, they're unresolved. And because they're unresolved, we're still seeking a solution for them. So we're chasing the answer, and we're using physical intimacy to achieve that answer. But as we all know, that's not going to help us. It's not going to be the answer. As I say, you know what? Things like porn, they almost work. Mm-hmm. They almost work. They get you there where it's like, I can forget, I can ignore, I can distract. But man, you got to come back. Got to come back.
Wow.
Do you ever get objections when you're working with clients about like why do I need to get to like childhood stuff? It's just I'm a dude, I got urges, plain and simple. Or I know like when people are faith-based, sometimes there can be a bit of a barrier because inner child work isn't a biblical or theological term. How do you help people work through some of these objections or hesitations?
Well, from the spiritual aspect, what I talk to them about is to understand that, we're not saying that you're possessed by this inner child. Okay? The inner child is you. It is you. They are suppressed memories that you have. And what we're doing is we are just what is scriptural is the fact that, we need to continue to evolve, to transform, to grow, to stay on the pathway of sanctification. And therefore, in your growth, your spiritual growth, it is about understanding, again, why I think, feel, and do what I do. When it comes to other people who talk about the fact, well, I just have the high sex drive, okay, which is what I hear occasionally from people. Let me backtrack for a moment. Every day, 2-3 people reach out to me to say, hey, I want to do inner child work. But see, that's when they reach out to me for that. They're coming to me because they've heard about this, they've seen it, and Shawn knows I refer people out, because I can only see so many people. But that's why they're coming. So I don't get that many objections as I used to in the past. But I remember the people like, I just have a high sex drive. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to sit there and argue with them about it. That's not the point. Say, fine. You know what? Let's just walk through the process. Just give me 2 months.
Yeah.
Just to get you going.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, we will. And sure enough, they start walking through it, and they start getting this insight. They start doing this self-reflection, and they say, oh my gosh, you know what? There's a lot more here. A lot more here. How many people have said, and I'm sure you guys have heard it too, the idea of, oh, I had a perfect childhood. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that. That's good. Talk to me about it. And they start talking about the childhood. What's missing, and again, there's no abuse, but what's missing is emotional connection. And part of that emotional connection is a parent helping a child walk through and deal with some of the pain, the emotional distress that they're going through in their lives. And there's nobody there to do that. There's nobody there. So therefore, they have to do that on their own. And in doing that on their own, they don't have the skill set, right? They don't have the worldly experiences. They're more emotionally based in their thinking than they are cognitively based in their thinking. So they come up with one coping strategy, which as I always say, is a brilliant one. I won't think about it. I won't think about it. Now, how do you go about doing that? Too much food, too much sugar, too much television, too much fantasy. And that's their way of distracting themselves. And they take that into their adolescent years, their teen years, their adult years, and they change out the behaviors that are more numbing or more stimulating. And you continue to do it over and over again, and you continue to play around with the neural pathways in the brain, guess what we have? An addiction.
How different are the client outcomes? Like if you think about, okay, you have two clients, one's going to come to you and you're going to do it the way you used to do it pre-inner child work as a clinician versus someone who's going through that inner child work process. On the other side, after you've worked with them for, let's call it 4 or 5 months, what are the major differences that you observe in how they have developed and evolved?
That's a really interesting question. That really is. And I would say, it's amazing I even have an answer for it, but I do. A person who's done the inner child work is more confident, they're more excited, they're more energetic, and they just feel a strong passion for the idea that, you know what, I think I understand how I can manage this disorder very well. Versus the other one who looks at it and says, well, this is good, I think I have things under control. They're more tentative. They're more tentative because, again, what they have is a lot of the behavioral stuff that they've been taught. Okay, so I need to do this when this happens. I need to do that when that happens. And I need to make sure I'm doing these different things, which, again, part of what the other person does also. But they don't have all the insight about why. And so I think that would be the big difference. Okay, you see, I can actually even picture these two people in my mind right now. And I'm really feeling kind of sad for the person who hasn't done the other child work. Not to say that person can't be successful. Okay, they can be successful.
Yeah.
I just think it's going to be more of a challenge for them. And I mean a challenge in the sense that they're not going to have the peace that the person who had the inner child work who's done that has. Because they have stronger conclusions. They have more data. That's it. They have more data that helps them to say, oh, wow. Yeah, I know what, I can manage this. Now notice I said, oh, I'm never going back. Okay, I didn't say that. And notice I didn't say, oh, I'm cured. I didn't say that either. I can manage, because that's what it's about. It's about managing the disorder. We talk about this idea. I don't like the label sex addict, porn addict. And the reason, and not that I don't like it because I'm ashamed of what we've done. No, we did this. But I don't think it should define who a person is. Just like I think an alcoholic should not be defined by, oh, you're an alcoholic. Okay? What we're dealing with are two basic things, actually three. One, we have an addictive brain. Two, we have a compulsive disorder. Three, we have an attachment disorder. Mm-hmm. Those are the three things we're dealing with. Okay? Yeah. So you have to find a different label. Okay, those are all clinical aspects of it. Okay? We don't call people who have diabetes, we don't call them diabetics anymore. I'm saying you have diabetes. Yeah. But the diabetes shouldn't define who they are. Wow. Do we walk around and say to somebody, oh, you're a cancer? For cancer? Right. No, we don't do that. You have cancer. Yeah. Well, here, you have an addictive brain, you have a compulsive disorder, and you have an attachment disorder, which, again, we don't spend enough time on. We really need to spend a lot more time looking at that attachment disorder so people have a better understanding of why they struggle to connect deeply with others, because, again, that's also at the heart of it. If you connect like this, comes apart pretty fast. If you connect like this, you're not doing what we do. The problem is we can't connect like that. It feels like this to us sometimes when we connect that way, but it's not. And so therefore understanding that aspect of how we're wired or conditioned, actually, if I want to be clinical about it, how we're conditioned is so important.
And I'm curious, Eddie, with what you're saying, maybe it's a little bit different now for you, but my experience would be when there are the guys who even have success in recovery, but it's the I have to do this every day or else mentality. Maybe you know that mentality. They have sobriety, maybe doses of freedom, but then you introduce inner child work. And because there's such an element of compassion and grace, it's very difficult for them to understand it. How have you been able to get past that challenge for people that are in that other camp and trying to get over to the inner child camp?
I don't run into that issue, to be honest with you, Shawn. I don't run into that issue too often. You know who I run into that issue for? And I'm sorry, guys, okay, but it's the older guys like me, okay?
Yeah.
The guys who are like, 70 plus, okay, and I'm 3 years, I'll be 70.
Wow.
Can't believe it. But you know what? It's like, those are the ones who at times, they kind of struggle to grasp the concept of the inner child model. But see, that's when I have to keep going back to them. And what I do with a lot of those folks is like, forget about the inner child. Okay, forget the kid. Let's focus on the why. Let's focus on the environment you grew up in. Let's focus on the conditioning. Let's look at the cast of characters that you were surrounded by. Tell me your story. Tell me what happened, what didn't happen. And then you start going there with that for them. So again, you have to, just like with anybody who does this well, understand that they have to adapt at time to client, right? In fact, they have to adapt all the time to client.
Mm-hmm.
There's no cookie cutter. Even the inner child is not a cookie cutter. And that's what's really fascinating. We had 9 kids to start with. We have 12. We have adopted 3 more since I've been here, right? We're not adopting anymore. We have enough kids.
It's following in Jesus' footsteps, just 12.
12 is a good number, yeah. There you go.
We have an even dozen, okay? And as I told you, I've traded out kids for horses now, so that's where I am. But, we have the 12 of these kids that are here, and what they all represent, and this is what I would want those people who struggle, instead of looking at them as children, look at them as what they really are. Mm-hmm. They are unique pain points that you may have suffered as a child or an adolescent or a teen. And you probably have more than one.
Yeah.
And that's the way I go about trying to deal with those.
Yeah.
When you do it in long enough, and you encounter like everything. You encounter every scenario there is possible, and you just understand that, you know what, I have to look at everybody who comes in as unique. They're all unique, they're all different, and I can't just say, okay, let's follow chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, you can't do it that way.
Yeah.
And besides, you know what? This is a pretty damn exciting process. I mean, I think it is. I love it. I get so thrilled. In fact, I tell my clients, and don't tell anybody else this, okay? Because this is my peers will scream at me if I tell them, including you guys. I tell my clients, you know what? Okay, I've seen you today. I'm not going to see you till next, Thursday. Reach out to me if you get some insight. Reach out to me if all of a sudden you're having these, you're kind of like struggling because all these memories are starting to come back to me. Reach out to me, and you know what? Send me a text, send me an email, leave me a voicemail, and I'll go back to you. And I'll spend 5-10 minutes with you because I want to know. Mm-hmm. I get so excited about it.
Yeah,
I want to know, what are you learning? as you uncover all of these things, I want to share that with you.
I've really enjoyed that, that part of inner child work, because there is a process to it, but I like that it's so individual, because that's a challenge we've constantly had here. I mean, I shouldn't say that. It's a challenge we had early on. I'm more of a systems person, so I wanted to create something systematic and structured, because I know that a lot of guys, that's kind of guy brain, tell us the system, tell us the steps, and at the same time, not be cookie cutter, right? Somehow cater to the individual variants. And I feel like my systems brain coupled with inner child work has really allowed us to do that quite well, to give guys a sense of, okay, there's a process. And at the same time, it's not rigid, and whatever's unique to my situation is still going to get addressed in a way that is, effective and helpful, and me not trying to feel like a square peg getting fit into a round hole.
Yeah.
So if Eddie, if you were trying to explain to somebody like what is inner child work, so they're sold, like, they've read the book, they've watched the first 20 minutes of this interview, and they're like, okay, I get it, I see the value, but what is the actual process? What are you doing when you're taking somebody through inner child work? How would you explain that to someone?
Right. That, again, an excellent question. What we're doing is we are trying to help them understand the rationale for why they're in the place they're in right now. Okay. Well, one of the questions I ask everyone when they come to you, see me the first time, is, so why are you sitting across from me? Why are you here? Well, I cheated on my wife, or I've been addicted to porn for so long. Again, they talk about the act itself, right? And so, okay, what are you hoping to accomplish? What will success look like after working with me? Well, I won't be doing that any longer. That makes perfect sense to me. But see, they don't understand that what they're doing, they're shortchanging themselves. We need to go deeper to understand. So the process is to help them first and foremost. I want to go back and I want to look at, again, what I call the cast of characters, okay? Who was there when you were growing up? In the family, maybe outside the family, people who had an impact on you, whether it was positive or negative. And we're going to go through all those people. We're going to walk through each and every one of them. And as they're doing that, I am just very, listening. I'm listening very closely to certain words that they're throwing out there. That I can pick up, that can say, wait a second, why did you refer to them using that adjective instead of this adjective?
Yeah.
Mother, where you say you call her mother instead of mom. Some people, you call her mommy. You still call her mommy. What? Just talk to me about that. I'm not judging any of it. I just want to understand more of it. And they start to go deeper and deeper into understanding how all of those people and circumstances, let's not forget about circumstances, people who become homeless for a while, their house might have burnt down, or maybe there's a violent crime in their family. There's those circumstances that play a role also. When they start to look and connect the dots, because that's what we're doing, we're just building a picture, connecting dots. And they're saying, oh my gosh, I never realized that what happened over here so long ago is what is really at the core of what's going on here today. And that's what we do. We just start to take the puzzle and put it together. And I will tell you, every once in a while, and I have to be really careful, because as people start to tell me the story and I'm listening to it, I'm already sitting there with the puzzle. Right, Shawn, you get this too? I mean, you're like,
you got it all mapped
the puzzle together. And I'm like, no, wait, stop, put the puzzle aside, okay? Because there may be other pieces that are there. And then on the flip side of that is you get every once in a while the person where there's just this missing piece. You have all of it, but there's this one piece that's missing that can't link everything together in a clean fashion. I would love to say, wow, I fill in that gap all the time. I don't. Because there are circumstances, one, that people just don't remember, can't remember. I'll send them out to get EMDR therapy, see if that might help along the way. There are some people who they're never going to fully open up.
Do you have to toe a line though? Because you're so experienced, and I know I feel this way about Shawn as well. Like, he's so knowledgeable. And a lot of the feedback we get from his clients are like, Shawn he knew more about me before I even shared it, kind of thing. Like, you just start to read people well. You've heard the stories again. So it's not just that you have a map, it's that you almost have these templates, right? That people start to fall into. And how much are you steering the conversation, but you're letting them connect the dots? And how much are you connecting dots for people? And does that shift throughout the client journey?
That is so important. I want them connecting the dots. See, I'm sitting here, okay, I got my stuff and I'm connecting dots. I'm not sharing this. I'm not sharing it. Now, I may have to drop in at times, but see, I need to be very careful. I don't want to put thoughts into people's minds. I
Yeah.
don't want to put ideas into people's minds. I don't want to put words in people's mouth. So it's very critical that I'm not the one who is driving that. So what the way to approach it in many cases is if they're sitting there and they're talking about, a father who, again, was just kind of completely absent, all right? And then you're looking, of course, your same-sex attraction that's playing out in their lives. And what I'm saying is, so tell me, go back to, and this is hard, this is difficult for some of them, go back to when you were young and try to remember what did it feel like that dad's just not there, or he's there and he's not paying attention to you? Okay?
Mm.
Because I want them to start to re-experience those emotions.
Yeah.
And then, okay, what's the counter of that? And then they sit there and say, wow, the counter of that is what I, meet this guy online and we start talking and it's like I just start to get butterflies in my stomach and I feel so invigorated and excited. They
Mm.
put it together.
Wow.
And that's what we're trying to do. It almost, in the perfect world, they would all put it together themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of them need a little bit more help.
Great insight, Eddie. Thank you for that. When you're working with guys, is there a typical amount of time you work with somebody to get from point A to B or A to Z, depending on what letters you choose to use? But is there a common amount of time you spend with someone?
Yeah, most people who I work with are with me for about 3 years, but the reason they're there for that long is the inner child work. I mean, if I wanted to rush through the inner child work, I could do inner child work probably in 6 months.
Yeah.
But again, rushing through it's counter to what we're trying to accomplish. So, it's probably a year, 18 months. But then what happens in most cases, what we're also working on is helping them with their emotional underdevelopment, okay, which goes back to the book of Why Men Struggle to Love. And so therefore, then that's coming into play also at the same time, maybe about 9 months into doing inner child work. Now we're starting to throw in what they need to do to be able to start to reconnect. Because what's happening is they're identifying their fears. They're starting to understand the reason I don't connect deeply is because I'm afraid. I'm afraid of rejection. I'm afraid of conflict. I'm afraid of not measuring up. So they're starting to understand these things and now helping them to manage that fear. Again, not to alleviate the fear, not to get rid of the fear. It's not going away. Okay. How do you manage the fear so that you can move forward and connect, understanding every once in a while, guess what? You're going to hit a wall and you're going to want to pull back. Okay, that's fine. That's all right. But be aware of what you're doing. Mindfulness awareness is so critical. I just wrote an article, that appeared last week. With the idea of, you can't try to push through. We're always taught when we're younger, just tough it up. You push through, push through. You can't push through if you're dealing with addiction, because what's happening then is you're missing all of the warning signs
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
what could lead you to relapse.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the fact of being drained in many areas.
It's like putting a piece of tape over the light on a dashboard, right? Like the light's still there whether you like it or not.
Right, right. But no, keep moving. Gotta
Yeah.
get,
Keep
gotta
driving.
get to that car, so, where it has to go. And that's counterproductive to this whole process. The whole process is about transformation. It's about, you guys heard this 1,000 times from me, slow everything down.
Mm.
Number one rule for me in recovery, slow everything down.
Yeah, that was the thing. Well, I got a chance to read your second book before it was released, so I could do an endorsement. That was Why Men Struggle to Love, and we did a full interview on that. If people want to go check it out, it's in the archives there. But that was the thing that impacted me. There were two things that impacted me. One was just talking about the lack of curiosity that often a lot of recovered porn addicts have, or former, people who had a porn addiction. They still don't have, a bunch of these things, right? Like we're talking about building those skills to emotionally connect. And the curiosity thing really struck me. I felt like, man, I never really noticed that before. But the other thing was just the continual emphasis to slow down. And I think that message, I hope, I don't know what you got in the pipeline, but I hope that message continues to get louder and louder from you as time goes on, because I think we're going to need it more and more. And I'm just wondering, when you're working with men who are very busy. In fact, on the coaching call, I did a coaching call before this interview, and I asked the guys, this is like a tune-up question I will do with them every once in a while, which is, what has been working and how can you do more of it? What has not been working and how can you do less of it? And one of the guys said, man, I didn't realize how much I was using busyness to cope with the more difficult things that were in my life. And I always told myself, like, oh, I'm actually not struggling with porn that much. But really, I was just busy. It was still the addict brain that is looking for the next thing, whether it's social media or a chore to do or something around the house or, whatever. So do you have any top pieces of advice for guys who are maybe struggling to slow down? And I know Shawn has really drilled this home as we've just revamped our whole course content, that importance of guys to regulate, just because if guys aren't regulated, literally everything we've discussed is like a 2 out of 10 as far as its impact instead of a 10 out of 10. So I think this is a big piece. I don't want guys to miss it. Top advice for slowing down and regulating.
Yeah, I love the fact you brought up the word regulation. We don't talk regulation very much when we talk about men. We talk about it when we talk about the betrayed partner, but we need to regulate also. And you're right, busyness, if you see busyness, what you're seeing is there's anxiety underneath the surface. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that is the biggest push I've been making lately. It's the idea, understand you are much more anxious than you think you are. And that anxiousness drives compulsiveness. Compulsiveness drives bad behaviors. We need to understand. So therefore, what is the solution to that equation I just gave you? Proactively work on the anxiety. Learn meditation. Learn to just sit and be still. Not just, in the morning or at night. No. Throughout the day, take 2 minutes. It's gonna suck. Guys, I'm telling you, for most of you, it's not at the beginning. But you need to learn to be able to do that. Therefore, at any time, you think about how uptight we are. We're like this. Drop it. Drop it. Catch yourself. You brought up a wonderful point about the idea, again, of that awareness. We need to have awareness throughout the day, every day, of how are you doing mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. Yeah. How are you doing? Do you have a lot of racing thoughts? Okay, is your judgment a little cloudy today? From that standpoint, fantasy popping in here or there. How are you doing emotionally? Is your mood shifting, changing? Have you gotten into this mood and you don't want to get out of it? Okay, how are you doing physically? Sit still for a moment. Oh, wow, I feel this tightness in my chest, or my gut actually hurts, whatever it may be. And spiritually, how are you doing? Do you feel connected to God? Do you feel distant? That is something that has to be part of you. That's real self-care. Yeah, diet is important, sleep is important, but this is the real self-care that we're talking about. It's about teaching men to be very aware of what's happening to them throughout the day and how, because all of that, again, you let it go. Again, this is that pushing through, right? You just let it go, 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 let it go. It's gonna pop.
Yeah.
Versus here. So therefore, to answer your question, meditation, Pilates, exercise is a really good way of doing it. But again, after exercise, take the moment just to relax, not rush, get dressed, and run off to work.
Yeah, right.
No, savor the moment. What did I accomplish today? What did I, gain from this today? We don't, years ago, somebody said, stop and smell the roses. Stop. Yeah. Smell the roses. Stop. Be grateful for many things that you don't recognize in your life that you should be grateful for.
Yeah.
I work with guys who are in treatment programs, and I meet with them occasionally. And of course, you could tell. I mean, here they are. They're in a residential program. They're not feeling good about themselves. They're like the fact that they're learning a lot of things, but it's not the best time of their lives right now. And it's like, what do you have to be grateful about? And it really takes them a little while. It's like, well, if I look at you guys, all have your limbs. None of you are blind. You can hear. You have somebody to go back to, even though she may not be happy right now, but still, there's something there. You're all working. You have resources. There are many things to be grateful for. There are many things to be grateful. You live in a free country, and we need to take that time. See, we just slowed everything down right now, didn't we? Yeah. Just talking like that.
Yeah.
And that's what we just need to do. Take the time.
Yeah.
It's so relevant, Eddie, because even in my own journey and countless clients, when we look biblically, we're called to suffer with Christ. We're called to do hard things through the power of Jesus. But when there's that entitled child or victim mentality, it just makes it so hard to be grateful for eyesight because we think we should have more, or we deserve more. So even just some of the things you've written in your book has been so enlightening for me, with my inner child being that victim, that entitled boy. And it's just really radically transformed the way I see gratitude.
Yeah, we're entitled to nothing.
Yeah, we deserve the flood.
Yeah, right. and yet, but from a Christian perspective, we have everything.
Yeah.
Because we're unconditionally loved and accepted.
Yeah.
We don't deserve that.
That's
we're not
right.
entitled to it. It's given to us.
Yeah.
It's given to us.
Yeah.
So we need to learn to appreciate that more. You need to take the time to sit and think about it. I think about it. I'm not doing it because I'm older. I've done it for almost 30 years. I think a lot about heaven, what heaven will be like. I think about frolicking with lions. I think about diving off a 100-foot cliff into water. I think about all these different things that will be and that I'll be able to do. That just helps me to slow everything down and to be quiet and to feel a sense of peace. And peace is what we really should be seeking to achieve. You can't get peace if you don't know what are those unresolved childhood pain points that are still haunting you today.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's funny you use that word peace, because I remember I did a word study on peace a couple of years ago. And the one thing I found, especially in the New Testament, is anytime you saw the word peace discussed with a little bit more depth, like Philippians 4, be anxious about nothing, but with prayers of supplication, there's a little bit in between, which I'll share in a minute, but then it says and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds. But the thing that I noticed is every time, but especially when Paul writes about peace, he always talks about thanksgiving. So it's with prayers of supplication with thanksgiving, or like Colossians 3, again, it pairs the two together. So I think what you hit on there is some secret sauce, and what you said is true at the same time. Like, you can't just have a gratitude journal and gratitude your way out of pornography addiction. You have to do the deeper work, but I think Thanksgiving can help you. It can kind of shoehorn you into it, and it can also sort of seal some of the work that's done. The last thing I wanted to ask you about, Eddie, before our time wraps up, is you've done some more work. You've sort of expanded this. Every time I talk to you, you've somehow expanded the message, which is really cool, because we all know that getting rid of pornography when you have a history of porn addiction doesn't necessarily fix everything. There are often either subsidiary issues that have been there all along that still need attention. Sometimes there's new issues, and we can say that for another day, that some of the newer issues. But I know you're starting to do inner child work you mentioned women who are struggling with pornography. And then you also talked about having inner child work for betrayed partners. Talk to us a little bit about that and how that all ties into our conversation.
Yeah, we are. Actually, it's a book that I wrote with my wife, Terry, and it is something we're extremely excited about. It launched back in November of last year, just launched, and it is done extremely well. We went through the process, because my wife is a coach and she worked with women who deal with betrayal. I dealt with women with betrayal for almost 6-7 years before I turned it over to her. So it's not like I'm ignorant in the field. I know a lot about it. But we also worked with other clinicians as we were writing this book to share with them, because I got to tell you, this was the most difficult book to write, because the thing we needed to be careful about was to make sure that those who were reading didn't think we were blaming them. Okay, that was really important. That it, look, this is part your fault. It's not their fault at all. But those who are struggling, and again, we're not talking about someone who just discovered what has gone on, the betrayal. Talking about someone who's been in it 2 years plus, and they're not getting. They feel like they're still in the cesspool. What this is about is helping them to understand that, you know what, there could be things from your past, wounds from your past, that are exacerbating the pain you're feeling now. And what we need to do is separate the two so that you can deal with what you're dealing with today by itself. And in order to do that, you need to sit and look and see what is your little girl, and of course little boys, because there are men who have been betrayed too. But let's say we're little girls. What is your little girl struggling with today? So therefore, for someone who perhaps maybe they grew up in an environment where they felt powerless. Okay, maybe they were micromanaged and they just felt like overwhelmed by things. So now as an adult, they're just kind of waiting for somebody to do something for them. And now they find out that their partner has been, off having different emotional affairs, maybe even physical affairs. And now their world is crushed because they're like, I don't know how to take care of myself. And now the person who was supposed to be here who helped me never was here for me. And now they're shattered. So therefore, we have to help them to separate the two so that they can stand on their own. Because what the goal is to help these people to feel good about themselves again. Because they don't feel good. They don't feel good about themselves because of what happened with the betrayal. They also don't feel good about themselves because of their reaction to the betrayal, which again is not their fault. They're going through betrayal trauma. But how many times have I heard a woman say, I've lost myself? Well, what we're trying to do is help them find themselves again.
That's so good. If a husband's listening to this and he's like, oh, my wife needs to read that book,
I want to smack them in the face.
So that's what I was going to ask is like, if a guy is listening and he wants to somehow maybe get his wife to warm up to the concept or at least get some help because we've heard this story, right? Like we've seen this again and again where the guy does his work, he quits porn, she still doesn't trust him. And partially that's because he has to do more to earn the trust, but also it's partially because there's betrayal trauma that hasn't been addressed. How do you bridge this gap?
Yeah, there's a chapter in the book for the men and what it says is this is not a weapon. This book is not a weapon for you to use to say, see, you're the one who's keeping us stuck here. That is not how you handle the situation. You just summed it up very, very well. They need to continue to be understanding. Let me tell you, women will come across this because groups are talking about it. Everybody's talking about this, okay? It will find its way into somebody's hands. So do not give it to them as a birthday gift or an anniversary gift. We do not want to be doing that, okay? I mean, if you want to say, hey, I just listened to a podcast and he's talking about the fact that, maybe you have some trauma from your past that is impacting the way you're feeling right now. Not the way you're handling it. I don't see there's not a problem doing that.
Sure.
But don't be pushing her to do it because again, they have to do it when they're ready to take the action. That's why I said this was the most difficult book to write. In a way, it was one of the easiest because it just came together. But the other way, it was painstaking to go through every word over and over again. And that's why we kept giving it to different clinicians to read, and this thing has been endorsed by every name who's who that you can imagine: Michelle Mays, Jill Manning, Janet Cardell, Carol Sheets. They've all endorsed the book. We're just blown away by it, and we're very excited because we're really believing that we're going to see women who are going to be healed. Because I got to tell you, I mean, to watch women who have been going through this for 5, 10, 20, 30 years, that's just unacceptable. I'm sorry, it's unacceptable. They need the resources to be doing it. In fact, one of the thought leaders, they came to us and said, I believe this is the missing piece in the healing of betrayal trauma. I
Yeah.
hope so.
Wow.
I hope that's what
Come
it is.
on.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for all the work you're doing to help men and now to help their wives and help women out there. I think it's phenomenal. Eddie, if people want to find out more about you, what you're up to, what are the books? Give us some of the books that we talked about today as well. We'll make sure we have links in the show notes. But where should people go next?
Well, where they can go, if they go to Amazon, because all my materials are all exclusively sold through Amazon, and just type in Capparucci, and you'll find a litany of them that are there. Never thought I'd write one, never mind six, and forget about the workbooks and all those things.
Yeah,
But they
yeah.
can also learn more about it. They go to innerchild-sexaddiction.com. They can learn more about the inner child bottle and what's there. And of course, you guys are excellent resources for them, and they should turn to you for that. And they can learn a lot there also.
Okay, that's amazing. Well, thanks for your time, man.
Thanks,
Appreciate you.
Eddie.
Thank you. God bless you guys, and
Bless
thank
you,
you for the
Eddie.
great work that you do. And you're just amazing.